Yeah.
Probably look at climate change considerations in Delhi very soon.
Yes.
How about you? Pune is having some rains?
Not yet, but temperature is pretty much down these days. I think it might be around 32 to 35. So fine.
That's pretty manageable heat.
Yeah. So Dr. Shahana, you are in Spain. How's the weather there?
I have come to India right now for the holiday. So I'm in Kerala right now.
Oh, okay. So Kerala is hot and humid, I believe.
Yes, right now it's kind of cold because it's been raining incessantly. So it's, I think, a bit cold. But yeah, otherwise when it's hot and humid. It's terrible.
I have never been to Kerala. Kerala is a destination on to-do list. So hopefully by end of this year or next year, I should be able to visit.
Yeah, you must. There are many beautiful destinations here.
Yes. So Parul, you are in India or outside?
So I was in Japan, but I'm also back in India and I'm in Delhi right now. So sharing the scorching heat weather with Srabani ma'am and tremendously missing Tokyo's weather.
So probably by the time you are back in Tokyo, Tokyo will also be hot.
Bro, yeah. I heard that it's already getting very humid there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think it's exactly 4 p.m. and we should get started. This particular program is also YouTube live. It's live stream, so many people might be joining from YouTube, and later on also they will be able to listen to this particular conversation. First of all, thank you, Professor Srabani, Dr. Shahana, and Ms. Parul for accepting our invitation to join us on this conversation. Just to give you a quick brief about the organization, IJBC is a bilateral chamber of commerce, started its operation in 2011 from Pune, and now we are a pan-India organization. And this year we are celebrating 70th anniversary of our diplomatic relations that started long back in 28 April 1952. So, and we have started with a series of events, and this particular discussion on your recently published book is also part of this 70th anniversary celebration. So I have with me our president, Mr. Siddharth. So Siddharth, just before we get started, would you like to say hello to all our panelists for the day?
Hey, namaste. Yesterday only I just came back from Japan and was actually I scheduled my flight to definitely not miss this session. I was waiting for it, and unfortunately I couldn't have my hands on the book because it is still available in Japan and no Kindle version. So I'm going to read after this, but hope I will enjoy this session. And once again, I am e-meeting with Professor Srabani Roy Choudhury. Thanks for accepting our invitation, and I'm very glad to meet other co-authors, Madam Shahana and Parul. So welcome all, and I'm really looking to hear you then I'm speaking. So let's get going. Yeah.
Thank you, Siddharth. So without making further delay to the actual discussion, let me quickly introduce all our speakers for the day. So I'll start with Professor Roy Choudhury. So Dr. Srabani Roy Choudhury is a professor in Japanese Studies, Center for East Asian Studies, School of International Studies, Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. Her association with Japan began with Japan Foundation Fellowship in 1996-97. In January 2012, she was a recipient of Visiting Scholar Program to Keizai Koho Center, Ministry of Economics and Industry, Japan. Subsequently, she spent May and June 2012 with Policy Research Institute, Ministry of Finance, Japan. In 2014, she was a visiting fellow at REIB Kobe, In 2019, she was on a teaching assignment at the GSID Nagoya University. Her recent publications are centered on economic diplomacy between Japan and India, and Japanese multinationals' experiences in India, their entry strategy, and their survival techniques. In light of the power dynamics in Indo-Pacific region, her recent work has trained to look at India-Japan relations in this perspective. She has, to her credit, 2 edited volumes, Japan-SAARC Partnership, A Way Ahead, it was in 2014. And the recent book that we are going to discuss today is India-Japan Relations at 70, Building Beyond Bilateral. So this Building Beyond Bilateral is actually really interesting catch line, and we will discuss more about it. So once again, thank you, Professor Srabani. Now let me quickly share the profile of Dr. Shahana. Dr. Shahana is currently working as an assistant professor at the University of Navarra in Spain. She received her PhD from the Center for East Asian Studies, Jawaharlal Nehru University in 2021. The topic of her thesis was Japan's Quest for Normalization, a study of security policy. She worked as a consultant at the Policy Planning and Research Division of the Ministry of External Affairs, New Delhi, for 1.5 years. She was the recipient of Japan Foundation Doctoral Fellowship, as part of which she spent 1 year at Kobe University, Japan. She was also the recipient of St. Stephen College, Soka University Fellowship and spent a year in Soka University, Japan. She is also affiliated to the Research Institute of Indo-Pacific Affairs, Japan. She worked at the National Maritime Foundation, Delhi, as a research associate for 1 year. Shahana completed her master's and MPhil from Jawaharlal Nehru University. She studied BA History Honors at St. Stephen College. Shahana is well conversant in the Japanese language, and her areas of interest include Japanese security policy, East Asian geopolitics and security, Indo-Pacific and India-Japan relations. She has published in several reputed national and international journals, and has been a panelist at several international conferences. Welcome on board, Dr. Shahana. And now we come our third author of the book, Parul Bakshi. So Parul is a PhD candidate at Japanese Division of Center for East Asian Studies, School of International Studies, Jawaharlal Nehru University. So Ms. Parul, so very soon we are going to call you as Dr. Parul. So she has also been a special research student at the Graduate School of Public Policy at the University of Tokyo as a Japan Foundation, at the University of Tokyo as a Japan Foundation Japanese Studies Fellow 2021-22. Her research is titled Japan Post-Fukushima Energy Transition Towards Renewable Energy, Lessons from German Energy Wind. She has previously completed her MPhil, top of her class from the aforementioned institute on the subject title Japan's Path Towards Renewable Energy, Scope for India-Japan Cooperation. Parul has widely published in academic journals such as Australian Journal of International Affairs, the Pacific Review, Environment, Science and Policy for Sustainable Development, and the Indian Foreign Affairs Journal, among others. She is also recipient of Mitsubishi Corporation International Scholarship in recognition of her excellence in Japanese language. Welcome, Parul.
Thank you.
So I think with all the three authors and having wonderful experience with Japan, my first query to all of you will be, you have come up with this wonderful book. So what made you write this book, and why this is beyond this bilateral? And what is your concept behind this beyond bilateral? So, I mean, Professor Srabani, definitely starting with you and then following the chain.
I'll take the lead, as I was the lead editor of the book. A little background to this book. This book is a contribution by research scholars of Center for East Asian Studies, School of International Studies, Jawaharlal Nehru University. This book was conceived during the pandemic days when all of them, even the editors who were sitting out here, felt very lost, demotivated because they could not have a routine in life. And the conversation between the three of us began on those. And I sort of felt that with the India-Japan 70 years looming large as an anniversary year in 2022, it would be good to sort of seek out the students for this activity of coming up with an edited volume. One, of course, the deadline was very clear to us. 28th April 2022 would be the day that we would launch the book. So having such a firm deadline always helps work of this kind, because the authors who contribute to the book obviously have a strong motivation to work on it. But being students, of course, it becomes easier to help them do this activity, because I would be able to push them much more than what we could do to colleagues. So having said that, when I set about to look at who would be contributors to the book, as I would like to let all people know, Jawaharlal Nehru University as a central university, one of the lead university in academics. But I take pride with the fact that we are a very inclusive university. And my attempt in this book was to actually include people who were not so articulate in English language, whose contents were very good, to be able to contribute to the book. And that is primarily the reason why I went ahead and had two more people in my editing team who would obviously help in articulating better their chapters. And I take a lot of pride in the fact that both my editors have worked very well with these scholars who had their limitation with English, to put across chapters which are today well within the benchmark that I had created for the book. As far as the subject goes, I think I will leave it to both my co-editors to talk about it. They are quite well versed. They can definitely do justice also. So over to you, Shahana, and to Parul. I think after Shahana, Parul, you can take over. Over to you, Shahana.
Thank you, ma'am, for putting it so wonderfully well, the origin story of our book. The title was something that came along as we explored different dimensions, as we saw the chapters. So it was not something that we came up first and then the chapters proceeded, but it came out. We felt that our chapters of the book was a very good reflection of what the title is. So the title, India-Japan Relations at 70, Building Beyond the Bilateral, does exactly that. Through this book, we are trying to show that India-Japan relations has gone well beyond the realm of what is usually understood as bilateralism in two different ways. The first way in which we argue that it has gone beyond the realm of bilateral is by saying that usually when you take two different countries and you look at their bilateral relations, what is traditionally the areas that are traditionally studied are usually just three. One is associated with soft power cultural relations. In the case of India-Japan, usually one reads about Buddhism, the links India-Japan had because of Buddhism, and other historical links. However, soft power as a scientific concept, as an academic concept, is not explored in its depth, is not explored critically. And this is something that our book, one of the chapters, manages to do really well. It takes the concept of soft power as introduced by Joseph Nye and very deeply and critically analyzes the concepts, different components of soft power, to deeply examine how strong really is the soft power ties between India and Japan. Yeah. The second traditional aspect that is taken is the economic links between two countries. So we have done that, covered the traditional aspects of economic links, which are usually trade, ODA, etc. But we have gone beyond that to also talk about how, since the signing of the strategic partnership between the two countries in 2006, The economic cooperation has taken a very strategic approach, which is reflected in the Japanese investments seen in the northeast of India. Japan is one of the first countries that is one of the only countries that is allowed foreign countries which is being allowed investments in the northeast. Similarly, in the Andaman and Nicobar Islands. So these are areas that our book has explored beyond just the economic realm that is traditionally explored. Right. The third area, third traditional area which is explored in bilateral relations is security. So our book, apart from doing a very comprehensive review of the security relationship between the two countries, which has become a very core to the bilateral relations today, we have also argued against the usual narrative that that India-Japan security relations have been strengthened not simply because of the rise of China. While it is an essential factor, it is not the only one. There are lots of other factors. Just the simple logic of these two countries coming together because of their shared value systems, because of the shared idea of establishing a rules-based international order. So there are lots of other reasons why these two countries would come together in terms of security partnership also. And we have also given a very comprehensive understanding of maritime security, apart from just a security overview. So, so these three traditional realms have been explored above and beyond in the book. So that's the first way in which we have bypassed the bilateral. The second way in which we bypass the bilateral is by looking at the multilateral cooperation of India and Japan, especially in the realm of the Indo-Pacific. Especially, an entire chapter is devoted to the India-Japan cooperation in various multilateral arenas, such as the United Nations, the G20, the East Asia Summit. So that's a very important way in which our book talks about how this relationship has gone well beyond the bilateral. Another very important aspect is something that Parul will tell us more about. Over to you, Parul.
Thanks. I think Ma'am and Shahana have actually covered quite a bit, but just building upon what has already been said, during the conceptualization of the book, I think one of the key things we had in mind was always to look into how can we go beyond the usual set of academic research which has already been conducted. So we didn't want it to be a repetition of something which has already been done, but we were constantly looking out as to how can we broaden the horizon and the perspectives of the work that we're looking into. So as Shahana pointed out, when we looked into like the title came out later, but even during the the conceptualization, that thought was constantly behind it. And one of the ways I feel that this book contributes to the ideology we had in mind is looking into areas which are not as frequently discussed as one might like it to be. So the traditional aspects, I think Shahana has already covered, and she also touched upon the multilateralism aspect of it. I also feel there are specific chapters, one of which happens to be authored by me, where I look into the energy cooperation. So I think even before we started this session, we were talking about climate change and energy crisis. Energy becomes critical part of that narrative, I feel, today. So bringing, highlighting that aspect is one area. More than that, there are chapters which look into cyberspace and outer space. Again, an area which is becoming increasingly important, but probably not looked at as critically or as extensively within the realm of a bilateral relationship, which we feel that in the coming years, the importance of it is only going to increase further. Other than that, it's even moving beyond that, Ma'am's chapter actually looks into the new frontiers. So we've also tried to shed some light as to the areas which probably haven't gained much ground as of yet, but we have a lot of confidence in the fact that in the near future, those aspects, and they can include the concept of blue economy, which is gaining a lot of ground, specifically with the rising importance of Indo-Pacific, beyond the security dimension. Blue economy is something which has been discussed. We have touched upon quantum technologies, biotech. So all of these areas are something which are very much in discussion at a global level, at a multilateral level, and I think it is slowly seeping into the bilateral dialogue too, specifically when it comes to India and Japan. So I think that is wherein we kind of justify and bring to light the building beyond the bilateral aspect of our book, which we hope would contribute to the understanding of these lesser discussed areas of cooperation.
Okay, so thank you everyone. So now with this, so what I can understand is basically there are three main aspects. Initially, everybody touched upon, and there are some initial description in your book also. Those are software or the cultural relations, followed by the economic relations and the security relations that is already there. And the beyond part is basically what are the new frontiers coming up. So if you see cyber security, if we see the energy security, all these things are anyway with the next generation things, and those we will. This book has already given us a way forward on those lines. Now, coming back to this, anyway, the regular thing is the security reasons that you said. I believe is India and Japan are already sharing a lot of security ties right from World War II days and after that. So China is definitely, I mean, as you already mentioned, China these days, yes, because of China, everybody is trying to roll up their sleeves and trying to partner with each other. But there are things beyond. But with Quad coming in, which is basically a multilateral body, and what do you see this bilateral relationship in maritime security, or the regular defense related things? Do you think Quad will take over the bilateral relations between India and Japan, or it will be the bilateral relation which will be much more stronger, and it will just remain a part of Quad?
Ma'am, shall I take this? Okay, I think.
Yeah, Shahana, go ahead.
Okay, so yeah, that's a very valid question to ask, because under the whole narrative of Indo-Pacific, Quad is being given a lot of emphasis. But what one must remember is why do countries conduct bilateral exercises together, right? The most important reasons why countries conduct military and bilateral exercises is to increase something we call interoperability. Right? This is a term that is very loosely used across literature, that Malabar exercises are increasing interoperability, or JIMEX is doing this or that. But interoperability is a term that needs to be understood very closely. In fact, I interviewed certain naval professionals, etc., and talked to them a little bit more about what exactly constitutes interoperability. How many years of exercises does it take to build a good level of interoperability between countries? And what most of them would tell me is that it takes at least 10 years of regular defense exercises between two countries to build a comfortable level of interoperability. And if you look at India-Japan defense security exercises, etc., it's actually the most the newest part of our relationship. We normalized the relationship to a great extent in 2000 with the visit of Prime Minister Modi, and then on it started progressing slowly. But it's only after signing a security cooperation agreement in 2008 that we've had a proper level of military bilateral exercise between the two countries. And what is interesting is that even though we have a more dense naval interaction, the interaction of our armies and the interaction of our air forces is very, very new. It's relatively very new. In fact, we've only had 2 exercises between the air forces and the ground forces. So it's only our navies that have really established some level of comfort, right? And what is even more new are the multilateral exercises, right? Malabar exercise is newer. Under the realm of Quad, we've only had 1 proper exercise with all 4 partners. Australia was inducted very recently. So the kind of interoperability that two countries need to build through bilateral exercises are very different from what they'll need to build under a multilateral setup, and both are essential in their own places. So I don't think one becomes the replacement of other. Both will continue. But of course, multilateral exercises gain a lot more attention in the media, in the mainstream, than bilateral exercises do. But I feel that both remain extremely important in their own places.
Thank you. Now a little different question. Dr. Shahana, when when you edited this whole book, which chapter appeals you the most?
Well, I would, of course, I have my own chapter in this.
Yeah,
so
other than that.
No, I'm not saying it's that one, but I think more than what appeals, I think the most important chapter in our book, which also introduces we call it a point of departure in academics, right? The point of departure of our book is definitely has to be the chapter by Professor Srabani Roy Choudhury, because it's the USP of our book. It's what makes our book stand out. It's what has never been done in this area before. So I think ma'am can tell us more about that.
You were mute.
Ma'am, we can't hear you.
All the chapters are equally important. Like it's like telling a mother which of your kids are the better kid. But looking at it very prospectively from an objective point of view, I would say we have a very good chapter on connectivity and Northeast, which is today becoming the fulcrum of the India-Japan relations. I think also, the one that, two chapters, that is security, which Shahana has written, as well as what is written by Tunia on maritime security and considerations of India-Japan bilaterals. I would just deviate again back to the previous question that was asked with whether, the Quad actually, I think, if you look at it from an IR point of view, it is essentially that bilaterals always help you build to a multilateral. And if you look at Quad 1.0 to Quad 2.0, as we call it in our academic parlance, 1.0, which sort of had an intermittent death, as everyone talked about it in 2007, and to 2017, I think that interim period when strong bilaterals was engagements and trilateral engagements were done between India and Japan, India and Australia, India, US, Japan, was probably one reason why when we came back to Quad, everyone had certain direction of what they wanted and homogeneity of thinking in the same line. Though you all know, you've seen it like getting a joint statement out by all the four countries has always been an issue of how we're going to treat China question. And this time it has been how would Ukraine be factored into the thing because of divergence. And that divergence is expected to be there because three of the countries are in an alliance system. We have a strategic autonomy to consider, and we have now been very thankfully because of the Ukraine crisis, I think India for the first time has given a strong indication of where our foreign policy is heading. And this gives us a good reason why the bilaterals would always be kind of a ongoing activity of convergences, which will lead to convergences in the Quad system. As far as that's one reason why I feel the next venture that probably this group of authors are going to take is to understand perspective of India-Japan with respect to Quad, because it fundamentally moves us to this question even within this book, which has been raised, that does the bilateral have a standing by itself? No longer it's so. Because of geopolitical consideration, we definitely move towards a multilateral engagement, and Quad is a very strong platform out here. And it's probably one platform where, shared, values of democracy, which is one tying up reason, would be further explored. And, where the Indo-Pacific would probably the littoral states and centrality of ASEAN into consideration, we'll see larger implications of it emerging, but backed by strong bilaterals of each of these countries with India.
Thank you.
Abhishek, if I can pitch in.
Sure.
So interestingly, we are discussing this Quad and bilateral things. But since this Ukraine start, I'm really wondering about where the BRICS stand. Right. So I want to hear your perspective on that, because BRICS formed for a different reason. I understand that completely. But both are important, and when the poles are changing, at least in the current situation, we consider one pole is still going to the old pole, that's America, and other is changing now from probably Russia to China, or maybe Russia plus China. So I'm really wondering where the BRICS stands in this context.
Who will take it up? Shahana, some thoughts on it? You're also following, I suppose.
Yeah. So like you said, the BRICS was formed for a completely different reason and it serves a different purpose. And it is often cited as an example to show the contradiction in India's foreign policy. On the one hand, we are a big mouthpiece in the Quad, the Indo-Pacific, and on the other hand, we are partners in BRICS. We are it's not just BRICS. We have the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. We have South-South cooperation in general. So it shows the other priorities of India's foreign policy, right? And it's the case with a lot of countries that you have your legs in two different boats at the same time because it serves two different interests at the same time. So I do not think that India being in the BRICS in any way changes the India's position on the Indo-Pacific, or it affects our larger argument of being a democratic country which believes in a rules-based international order, international law, human rights, etc. But I mean, yeah, maybe Parul can add more to that, or ma'am.
Parul?
No, I think I broadly agree with what Shahana said. I feel, I think, as of now, the narrative is, more recently, I feel we focus more on giving importance to one specific multilateral institution at a time. So as of now, because Quad is so dynamic, and the participant countries and implications of Quad have become so relevant to what is happening right now. And you specifically asked with the background of the Ukrainian crisis, which is going on. I actually feel that these multilateral forums and the fact what Shahana pointed out, that India being integral part of Quad as well as an integral part of BRICS, could also be seen as a window of opportunity. How much India is able to tap onto the fact that it is a crucial member of both these organizations as of now, and going forward in the background of this geopolitical churning which is happening, with you mentioned the multipolarity, and we don't know exactly the position of Russia going forward. I mean, it's still a situation which is unfolding, and a lot of countries right now are still trying to deal, like the EU in itself, which becomes a huge component, a huge set of countries who have been directly impacted by the crisis. So I feel in the next few years, we probably would see more of how being part of these different multilateral forums can actually be beneficial to connecting it to the previous question which was asked, but bringing it down to the bilateral level as well, because I feel at the core of the core of the success of any multilateral institution lies the success of bilateral relations within that multilateral forum. So yeah, I think that's what, ma'am, if you would like to add something to it.
It's a very interesting questions, and there's really not one answer to this at the moment, given the situation as both the other editors have spoken. But what I would like to add is, multilateral forums are often places to iron out bilateral issues. Like if you look at the Shangri-La dialogue right now, the fact that the defense minister of China and the defense minister of Australia shared a table across. Big news in the international forum, because it got an opportunity to talk about what was considered to be a very cold kind of a situation between China and Australia. I think similarly, such forums, multilateral forums, are often areas of engaging beyond, and they might actually prove to be areas. And since India is positioned within BRICS, I think for India, the international community for the first time gives India the opportunity to actually become a true mediator in the whole, polarity that was happening. But within the narrative of international relations, we are also talking about now that the fact that there would be no polarity really, but rather would end up becoming a middle power concerns. And it is in this realm that I think both the Quad and the BRICS would have a larger role to play than what was being assigned in the previous world order that we saw so far. I hope
just one small follow-up question or a prospect, my thinking, and then we can again get back to Abhishek. I completely understand this, but I still wonder. I spent a very crucial time in Tokyo, actually, on the ground zero, where I was conducting my business, but I was surrounded by all these things that was happening, and I was quite watching all these things. What we are saying in this forum, are we really able to convey that? Because there is one thing we need to understand here is Japan is military ally. So the relation there, bilateral relation with the US is a very different than what we are talking about, the India-Japan bilateral relationship, or India-Australia, or Quad. In that context, it's still, for me, I mean, to my understanding, it looks very difficult for Indian situation to convey what we are discussing on this forum very clearly. And so do you think we could do that, or we have to do more about it?
Academics are at an advantage. We look at it objectively, we criticize it, but we are obviously not policymakers who definitely fight a different set of challenges and therefore require different kind of way of attempting to do it. But I think currently, if you look at our external minister, Jaishankar, he has come very strongly to say that we no longer can be Europe-centric. You have to understand that there are other parts of the world, and we are one of those other parts of the world. I think that puts certain things in perspective from the Indian foreign policy framework. But obviously, as all of us have been constantly telling that it is unfolding, it is too early to say something. But as any time, current situation requires you to be up the game and talk more clearly, I think at the moment, what I see, USA is very strongly putting up its foot in the Indo-Pacific by saying things which seem to be very difficult to digest for me also when Biden talks about Taiwan concerns of his, because it's not there in the actual agreements. There is a one China policy that USA has in 1972 agreed to. But fact that it has come, it's being put forward, the fact that Japan is trying to be very strong with the Ukraine crisis, in spite of the fact that Russia has territorial issues with Japan, and therefore pushes Japan to address it domestically also, rather than just, Ukraine is far foreign policy. Okay, I look at only is, getting a few Ukrainian immigrants in, and that's it. But, it's not so for Japan right now. Yet Japan taking such strong stance gives me a lot of a lot of attention to the fact that security and strategic concerns of Japan is going to shift more towards becoming normalized version, which in fact Shahana's own PhD work was all about, talking about how small incremental changes that has already been made. We might actually see further stronger changes now. Of course, I do not see the Article 9 Constitution of which talks about anti-militarism and pacifism, that changing, but within the keeping that in place because of the needs of the nation, as they will call it, with Russia again formidable. You have North Korea, which is anyway a rogue state, and then you have China rising, which has always been a problem. I think Japan, for the first time, is in a position to take a stronger leadership, and Kishida has shown that. He takes a trip to India, puts the Ukraine crisis up front in his discussion with our Prime Minister, and gets a very strong message also from our Prime Minister, which talks about, yes, humanitarian consideration, we are all there for you. So I have a feeling that for Kishida's tenure, post-Abe's, you would see certain strong directions coming from him. His Shangila statement of peace and stability also gave us a certain thing towards this whole project of trying to get an alignment among the liberal order countries, in which Japan has a strong role for itself than just being a, tagging along with the US lines. I think Shahana must be following this with her, whole attention drawn to security. I think she would have to say something more to it, I think.
So what Mr. Siddharth pointed out was that it's absolutely true, because US, Japan have a military alliance. US, Australia have, Japan and Australia have very strong military cooperation. And these are first world economies. So in many ways, India rebates the outsider in Quad. Even before it had to take a stance on difficult issues, even before that, India remained an outsider. But I think what we must remember is that I think all countries understand that in this game of global geopolitics and international relations, national interest remain key. It is not that the West has done everything it could in the Russia-Ukraine crisis. They drew a line at where they thought was best for them. They drew the line at sending weapons instead of sending troops or sending aid or imposing sanctions. So India's national interest necessitated it to draw its line somewhere. And it's not just India that has refrained from taking a strong stance on this. Many countries have acted in their self-interest, even when it meant going against your larger rhetoric or larger narrative. For example, America under Trump withdrew from Trans-Pacific Partnership when TPP was an American initiative. Right. Similarly, if you look at the Belt and Road Initiative, a lot of the Western countries are in fact members of the BRI. India is one of the very few countries that's not a member of the BRI. So Australia, France, when it came to Australia, France, the submarine agreement, France was chucked out at the last moment. Australia went another way. So there are no permanent friends, no permanent enemies in this reality, right? It all boils down to your national interest. And I genuinely do not think that India should be India. I think everyone understands India's position of why India wouldn't take a stance here, against Russia, because and I don't think any other country would have acted differently, because we all know why India took this position, because of India-Russia defense ties. It's too strong. It's not a reality that can be changed overnight, and countries understand that, I think, and which is why many countries have come out and taken a very soft stance. For example, Australia has taken a very soft stance on India's position on Russia, etc. So I think we don't need to seem too desperate about justifying our national interest. I think what we've done is pretty much was what any other country would do.
If I may just add, sort of moving beyond India as well and bringing in another perspective to this, is the global energy crisis, which I think is very critical and hard to ignore in this whole dynamics, what is happening. As Shahana pointed out, when it comes to national priorities, energy becomes a crucial factor, and we cannot ignore the fact the reliance of the number of countries on Russian natural gas as well as other sources. Japan in itself is heavily dependent. EU is having its own issues. Germany, critical, player within the EU and at the international level. So I feel like it all sort of comes down and integrates into this, evolving perspective as to where every nation, of course, to begin with, is putting its national priorities up front, as is India. And, there have been stronger stances, but, the varied perspective within the security realm. So energy security then again becomes part of that perspective, while these countries, try to make their stance clear at an international level. So I think there's a lot of background dynamics, which is also playing up when it comes to the ongoing situation right now.
Thank you. And indeed, it's a really inside discussion on this particular topic. Of course, this is quite complicated and always, updating topic. So there are maybe many more opportunity to discuss on this. Over to Abhishek for now.
It was really nice listening to all this dynamics. So now, Parul, just very quickly, your favorite chapter, other than you, the last chapter of Professor Srabani and Shahana. So leaving this, you three.
So I think, as ma'am pointed out, it's very difficult to sort of pick up one chapter. And I'm not trying to be diplomatic here, but the thing is that the book has been written in such a way that what we tried to do was to cater to everybody's personal individualistic interests. So, of course, our respective personal interests lie in our, research areas. So it is unfair to, bring anybody's research interest and area above anyone else's. What we hope to do with the book, and what we hope we have succeeded, is that coming from different walks of life, anybody picking up this book with a interest in India and Japan, either together or individually, would find something which caters to their personal interest and understanding. So I really don't think that, maybe the introduction, then I'll go with the introduction, because it brings everything together. If I have to, it brings everything together.
This is I believe, most what you say, diplomatic answer.
But see, it gives you an insight into everything.
Yeah. So now I have a couple of things on energy security, but before going to that, for everyone's better understanding of the book, can you just take them through the various chapters and maybe one-line content of the chapter, so that it appeals us more that we should go and buy the book immediately and start reading. So I have looked up the proposal and all those things that Professor shared with me, and it's really very interesting. Because one thing that you said, anyone who comes and read this, for anyone and everyone, there is something in it. So if I come from energy sector, there is something for me. If I come from say economic segment or cultural segment or security, I have something in it. So just a quick brief about the book and various chapters that it has.
Ma'am, with you first.
Okay. It was very traditionally, as Shahana unraveled to you people a little while ago, the three pillars. So we had started off by looking at the civilisational to strategic partnership of Japan, where we drew link to the history, to the pre-Second World War to post-Second World War, and the entire journey that has happened. Given that umbrella thing, we went on to look into the soft power equation between these two countries, where the major takeaway was how, while a section of narrative has always built on the Buddhism, the traditional aspect of India-Japan relations with respect to Rabindranath Tagore's visit, or the Tokyo Tribunal, and the stand that the Indian judge took, to what happened post that we inked our own strategic peace treaty, which is why it's 70 years this year. We did that book, soft power did look into the new aspects of soft power, which is the anime, gaming, Bollywood, and the amount of strong inroads that India has made into Japan through the Bollywood, and how much of inroad it's happened with anime and gaming options that has been young generation's soft power calling. We then went into looking at the security partnerships, where, as Shahana delved into by saying that we not only looked into the entire security concept, but focused on also maritime, because maritime is the most engaging dimension of security relationship between India and Japan. And of course, because we're looking beyond the bilaterals, it becomes a major place where, future of Quad coming in, and other kind of activities that would come in. Fostering connectivity was obviously the chapter which looked into the whole aspect of infrastructure connectivity, and a larger narrative that is there, that Japan wants to do this activity as an option to BRI, and therefore also looking into how Japan would therefore function within the Indian connectivity story, and the infrastructure in the Northeast being a major area because of its strategic importance, and because it has a lot of cultural connect with that of Japan because of the Second World War thing. And ultimately, after this, we go on to the latest of what is beyond factor, that is with respect to the multilateral engagements that Japan has, in which we look at United Nations, East Asia Summit, and how India and Japan participate in the G20, etc. And then we go on to looking at the cyber security, outer space security, Parul's work on new renewable energy and energy cooperation, and how these are the pillars on which we see the future of this relationship really figuring. And I then bring into the absolute new areas that is opening up, because we have small working groups already, or we have joint papers that has been started evolving with quantum, with artificial intelligence, with robotics, with blue economy, and considering that the world, in spite of what the world is currently being consumed because of the Ukraine crisis, the global crisis of energy, etc., the sustainable development that has been put forward by United Nations has become lead in everyone's foreign policy, and climate change is one agenda. If you look at the Quad Summit meet, you see that it is placed strongly by talking about QChamp, that is basically climate change adaptability and mitigation package that Quad wants to put forward, makes it a more reason why the bilaterals will also be figuring in these aspects, because that would essentially lead the way to lead the way to sort of incorporate the Quad vision. And this is why this book is going to be a narrative which is going to help people look at, what would be the, what would be the future of this relationship, which would be something, as I always been already telling people, that 75 years would be probably the time to actually, sort of use this last chapter as the beginning point and create narratives of another 10 or 12 chapters, which will give us the next set of cooperation agenda that India and Japan is setting for themselves. So this is the book essentially, and as I always feel, it's a very good book for anyone who wants to understand the 70 years in a very quick fashion. The book is very readable. It's not filled with much of academic jargons. We try to keep it as simple as possible. And if you look at even the cover of the book, we have basically used the 50s. In 50 years, stamps have been used as a way of cover, trying to ensure that there was no copyright issues, basically. That's why you have a Nippon in one end and you have a Bharat in another, India, Bharat in the, top right corner is Nippon, and it says 90, it was basically 90 cent. And in the bottom end, you have Bharat and India on the cover. So there's a lot of, interesting things that happened while this book was being conceived and put back on the table for people to read. Feel very happy that we got this opportunity to talk about the book also. So over to you, Abhishek. I don't know whether I've rambled away a lot more as what happens when you're talking about something that's so close to one's heart.
No, that's absolutely fine. So I think we have interacted for quite some time. I have a couple of questions. I'll come back with those. But meanwhile, if anyone from the participants, I can see many eminent participants here. So anyone from the participants wants to ask questions about the book. Okay, so by the time participants keep thinking, I have one question for Parul. So Parul, you wrote this chapter on energy security. Now, if we look at the energy, Japan, they don't have any energy for to be given to India. I mean, petroleum to be very precise. And renewable energy, as far as space is concerned, probably Australia is having much more renewable energy compared to Japan. So how do you foresee a better relationship between India and Japan in context of energy security from both the sides? Do you foresee that India could become a bigger security partner for ensuring sufficient supply of energy to Japan at a later point in time? May not be today, but at a later point in time. Or do you see there will be some technologies coming up from Japan which India can adopt for ensuring its energy security from the renewable energy side. So what is your thought, perspective, and maybe your learning from the book?
Right. So, sir, during the course of, when I took upon the, writing the chapter for this book, firstly, instead of energy security, what the chapter primarily focuses upon is what I would term as energy cooperation. The reason I make that delineation is because when we think of energy security, we, in a bilateral context, I think largely people assume that the two countries are going to aid each other in either through energy resources, which is a part of the question which you asked me. If I were to answer that very briefly right at the beginning, I find it unlikely that there would be a direct exchange of energy resources between the two countries. It could be possible, but given the exponentially rising demand of energy domestically for India, I feel it would be very difficult for India to become at least a critical partner for Japan when it comes to sharing of energy resources, especially the non-renewable or conventional fossil fuel energy resources, be it coal, gas, as it is more dependent on imports. So I think that would be difficult. But throughout the chapter, what you see is that I try to highlight the reason I've specifically focused upon renewable energy transitions in the power sector is because in the background of the Paris Agreement, what I've tried to highlight is the fact that both the countries are on the same path towards energy transition to renewables. So that is the combined vision or the shared vision which I feel both the countries possess, and it is looking at that I try to chart, look into the areas of probable cooperation for both these nations as to how can they meet this shared vision, even though national priorities as well as energy mixes of both the countries vary to a very large extent. So in this regard, I've charted out 3 areas which I feel could be beneficial for both the countries. The first is, of course, technology, which is something even you mentioned. There is certain amount of work which is already happening between the two countries. However, there's tremendous scope for growth, specifically the fact that India is a huge potential market. It is estimated that even solar energy is going to be the second largest world market, right after China. So, for all the technological innovation which Japan has been trying to put forth, specifically with its hydrogen vision, with its ammonia vision, even now, could be probable areas where India could collaborate and act as, a sandbox for these technologies to develop further. The second area I talk about is actually economic. Economic ties between the two countries are historically known to have been foundational for the bilateral relationship. And when I talk about economy, I'm not again talking about a one-way reliance of India on funds from Japan. What I'm looking at is sort of broadening that sense of economic partnership within the realm of energy sector, which then correlates with the technology aspect of it. So, be it human capacity building, something which strengthens both the nations. Also, nuclear fusion technology is something which is not heavily discussed in the chapter for, to do. We had certain limitations to the book as well, because this could have been a whole new area. But there are specific regions where they are already collaborating and they're part of other multilateral initiatives looking into how to diversify their energy mixes, domestic energy mixes. So it is in that area where technology and economy then comes into play together in order to facilitate further cooperation. The third aspect then becomes policy cooperation. Now, policy cooperation can be very controversial given the nationalistic nature of energy policy, because it is a critical part of national priority for any country, and India and Japan are no exception to that. However, the reason I bring in policy cooperation is because it is domestic level policies where the concept of policy learning from another country can come into play. So if you're looking at a combined vision of transitioning your energy sector towards expanding renewable energy or making it more sustainable, or green energy as we like to call it now, that policy cooperation in the sense of how can you assess data, energy data becomes very critical for you to bring in any critical policy changes, and which is a region where it's an area where India kind of has a lot to learn from. Japan, I feel, has still been progressing more than India. So it is there. The other area is nuclear energy, which again becomes, it is a continuous presence in Japan as well as India, despite the challenges with nuclear energy in itself possesses, and despite it being beyond the realm of what we know of as renewable energy. But then again, it becomes such a critical component of the energy mix and of the energy cooperation that it is something which probably needs to look into at a, So I think broadly, these are the areas which I have looked into. And so in certain aspects, groundwork is already there. So I feel that all we need is a more initiative and incentive for both the countries to kind of embark on this process of what I call policy learning and on-ground implementation of that learning in order to propel both the countries towards a better bilateral relationship when it comes to their energy cooperation.
Thank you. Thank you, Parul. It's very nice. Yeah, I think this will be more on a cooperation part rather than actually supplying energy to one another. That will not happen. So okay, that's fine. I think we are pretty close to the 1 hour timeline that we have. But any questions? I don't see any questions from anyone. This is very strange.
Can I ask a question, please?
Yes, please.
Yeah. So, you mentioned about, Professor, you mentioned about connectivity and Northeast and fulcrum of Indo-Japan relationships. Well, I have not read your book at the moment, but I have definitely read the book about from Sanjoy Hazarika, who's a close friend and a senior from school, and about Northeast India and Japan and engagement through connectivity. I keep wondering, I'm based here in the Northeast, speaking to you from Guwahati, and I keep wondering, yes, there is a lot of talk, and it's very fashionable to talk about Northeast from a Japanese perspective, but how much is really being done on ground, which is really effective or is going to really be meaningful from a long term? It's yes, it's very nice in media, it's more talked about, etc. So I keep wondering that is this a slow process or is really intentional and they intend to do something really serious?
I have ventured into looking at it very recently, because of the interest that Japan is showing on this. Frankly speaking, when CEPA was inked in 2011, there was a time when quite a few of us were saying that, Northeast should be brought into the CEPA agenda of India and Japan, because there are lots of good business propositions that can emerge, especially with respect to, farming goods, shiitake, etc. And we had asked for, packaging units to be set up around that place. Somehow it didn't take off. Probably it didn't get heard by the right quarters, as I always say. This time round, the issue is very different. It's more of a geopolitical reason why it's suddenly been looked into. I haven't visited Northeast for a long time. My last visit was in 2008, 10, that period when few reasons, where we went for academic exchange, etc., with some universities. So I'm not very sure how it is being projected at ground zero. But what I see, and these are the developments that I feel is very encouraging for me, is one, JICA's approach towards this region, their essential understanding again that Northeast is not one region, but it's got 7 states. Each state has their own defined agenda. Each state has their own way of looking at things, and therefore they have to learn to know all of them. And the trip that the previous, as well as the current ambassador did of traveling through this entire region, I give it a good, like for Japan, one who studies Japan, we all say these are very encouraging moves. As far as groundwork is going, I think there are certain bridges that is getting built. And if I look at it a little more, objectively, I see a certain set of bridges being built in Bangladesh, which if we are, what has been laid out in paper of bridges and roads being built, would connect up Bangladesh and India pretty well. Now, obviously, there is huge political concerns behind this, and I'm not very competent to talk to you about it. But what I see it from an economic perspective, this is a huge leap, because once we can connect up the very happening region of Bangladesh with Northeast would be able to become much more economically engaging with the world, and could bypass this chicken neck that is much talked about as a reason why Northeast was not really made its inroad into the whole thing. The other thing why I feel very encouraged about, and I really feel that it'll take some time for people to have a feel-good factor, is how, if you look at Delhi and the metro system. I remember when the metro system was initially built, I think everyone complained about how much more time it took to travel between places. But today we all feel happy with the metro system that has been laid out for us. I think you are in that period of time when you really don't see it, but you hear a lot about it. And I also feel that the pandemic has been a reason why certain delays has happened with not only funding, but I think ground level roads being built, like the Barak Valley. People are very concerned right now because nothing has come out of the big story that was built for them. But I think I am very positive, and I am looking at this aspect very keenly, because my concern now is not so much on the geopolitics of it, but how Japan is going to help maintain a sustainable development agenda, the climate change agenda within the Northeast, because Northeast is one place where I think instead of going the brownfield way of manufacturing, we are looking at sustainable development model, and could be a great example to look at certain prefectures of Japan who have been able to convert themselves into this aspect. I think this is where I feel we would be needing some amount of strong engagement. And I think this is where probably the future would be, and the fruits of it will take some more time to sort of mature. And right now it's too, as you said, I also do believe, I often tell this also, that we are talking a lot, bullet train, we are talking a lot, we're not being able to deliver. And this goes against private investments from Japan, because they see no headway. So they feel very anxious. And we need to, learn from this such that we don't repeat it in future. But I think it's a learning curve for both the countries with respect to Northeast.
Thank you so much.
So, Rajivji, I think we as IJBC, with guidance from our advisors like Professor Srabani, we will probably be able to do something on ground zero to take this relationship between Japan and Northeast to the newer heights.
Yeah, I think it's definitely, with her, all the knowledge that I'm just hearing, it's so refreshing from our daily routine that we are involved. It's totally a different perspective. Yes, if a good think tank is involved, and Professor just mentioned about shiitake mushrooms and things like this, I'm aware that JICA has funded, or I would say pumped in money. But the problem is that how much of it is well utilized, and how much is actually, on ground zero really worth that investment.
So, for instance, with Northeast, I feel you have strong English-speaking community. And, frankly speaking, it's unfair to really say this, but it is truth that the features, physical appearance, etc., is such a strong cultural linkage that to use, for nursing, which is something that is of prime importance today in Japan, I think we have a strong, if you can build that skill set with a bit of language ability, Japanese language ability, I think we have a strong service sector that can open up for the Northeast.
So, Professor, just to add that, Rajiv ji, he himself is running this organization of teaching Japanese people, and he is training almost 15-16 tribal girls who know a little bit of nursing. He's training them with Japanese language, and they will probably be they will probably go to Japan as a caregiver in near.
I think that is one place we have a potentially good outcomes, and if you sort of can make it a regular even, then they will not have to be staying also for a long period of time, say 2-3 years, and then you rotate them around so that they feel happier coming away in case they're not very happily settled out there. I think it could be a very good option. We need to do a lot of work at the people-to-people's exchange level. I think that is, I consider, the next major way of linking up these two countries. Policy level, we worked. Business is still on the move. But people-to-people exchange, I think we definitely are laggard if you look at the 3 pillars that is usually talked about bilaterals.
I remember my professor in Japan, a Japanese professor, also asking me if students from Northeast are interested in getting scholarships to the universities there. So there's a lot of interest in actually developing more exchanges also at an academic level. So they specifically sought out students from Northeast, etc. But yeah, so like ma'am said.
Yeah, sure. I actually, just to add here, Professor, just for the input of everybody, this potential is very well talked about. I think the major gap I realized after now that we are training these people and running this program is who pays for the training. The problem is that they are not financially so strong to be able to pay for the training and get to Japan. And I think that's the bridge, if we can bridge it, even if it calls for a temporary bridge. And, unfortunately, the Japanese government doesn't allow a contract like other nations to be able to pay out of salaries. There seems to be some story there. And because if you look at today, Germany, Poland, and some other countries which are getting into the international recruitment arena, they are allowing that, yes, so much can be deducted by the employer and paid directly to the people who have deputed. But I think Japan has to still understand that aspect.
It's slow on immigration,
Yes.
So
Yes.
it would have to work out, I think. But I think now things would change a little with the engagement that Kishida has shown towards India. I think we would look at certain, because immigration rules, they are also set to change internationally for them. So I think some inroads might be made at this point to strike with Japan with this contractual labor concerns that we have.
Right. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay, so just before we come to some closing remarks, any other questions or comments from anyone? Any participants wants to add? Okay, so before we sum up today's discussion, just one line summary message that you want to tell to all the participants today, starting from Professor.
One summary, please buy our book. We need it for our next venture.
Absolutely. Yes, we definitely have to buy it and learn more about the relationship.
No, but that's, I think any author would like that. But apart from it, I think one thing that I would like to definitely say, that I'm opportune to be in a period of time when India-Japan relations are in a position of strength. And we have a rightful place for ourselves within the Japan, within the bigger Indian international community. And I think this particular relation, as both Abe and Modi ji has said, that it is the relationship of this century. So I think I would plug my book within this particular thing, that it is this relationship, exploring the relationship of the century. Over to you, Shahana.
One thing I've missed out on saying is that our book is also an excellent compendium of all the joint statements that have ever been produced between India and Japan. So you will not find it anywhere else. That's also a big selling point. And moreover, this is also a huge encouragement for young scholars, young students who have come together to produce, I think, an academically excellent venture, all biases aside. So please do encourage this further. Yeah. Thank you. And thank you for giving us this opportunity. Thank you.
Yeah, I think adding on to what Ma'am and Shahana said, I feel I'll just reiterate the point of building beyond the bilateral, and how that initiative can definitely be taken forward as a future research, as people interested in both the countries, from both the countries, looking into those markets. So I feel we hope that we've been able to contribute towards that insight which we wanted to bring in. And yeah, thank you so much for having us here today. Thank you.
Thank
Just
you.
add this. I was pleasantly surprised as I came back home from the book launch that Mr. Siddharth Deshmukh had already sent me a message on the WhatsApp saying that, oh, wonderful, we want you out here. Believe me, it's a great pleasure to be invited to talk about one's book, and especially a proud moment for me because I have my students with me out here, and feel very honored and of course equally grateful to all of you to have given your time for our book, and the fact that you put it through this platform on your 70 years of celebration. It's really a pleasure and a deep honor for us to be here with you all.
Thank you. So Siddharth, any last comments from your side before I wrap up today's discussion?
Wonderful, delighted session. I'm definitely waiting for that book to arrive. Maybe in 2 days it arrive. I already secured the copy, but this conversation itself is so excited, and we need many more. So right away, I'm going to invite you to the Konnichiwa Pune, which is going to happen in November. And by then we will have much more to talk again beyond this diplomatic bilateral relationship. I'm sometimes been more accused of running a business council than running a people to people, educating people to people connect. But I think business can only happen when people connect with each other, and we need more book, more perspective, more beyond thinking. And I have this project to discuss with you when we meet, or maybe in some different platform, that we need one more such book where we want a contribution from the both side. We want some authors from Japan side also, and that will be very interesting on us. This learning what the Japanese academician also think about this, and that will be very interesting next volume of this book, and I'm looking forward to that, I'm sure. But for now, I've really enjoyed this session, and because this session will remain there on our YouTube channel, so many people who couldn't join today will are able to enjoy it in coming days also. So looking forward to another opportunity to be connected and discuss with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Siddharth. So just a request to all the participants, feel free to get a copy of the book and read it. It will definitely tell you a lot more about India-Japan relations. And as authors already mentioned, and the book title itself says Beyond the Bilateral. And I'm really intrigued by this Beyond the Bilateral, because that is something which is future, and we should be well versed about what is going to happen. So with this, we come to an end of today's wonderful discussion. So I thank Professor Srabani, Dr. Shahana, and Parul for spending an hour-long session with us. So thank you very much, and also thanks for writing such a nice book. So it's definitely a wonderful way forward for both the countries. So thanks for that. I also thank IJBC and the president of IJBC, Siddharth, for actually conceptualizing this event, as well as arranging everything for us. All the IJBC participants, as well as all IJBC members, I thank you all for sparing your time and listen to us. Also, this 70th anniversary, we are already getting recognized from Consulate General of Mumbai, Embassy of Japan, in the Government of India, as well as Indo-Japan Laboratory of KU University. So I thank all of our partner organizations, and also sponsors. We have a few sponsors for our year-long online events. It starts with Fujitsu, then Tutor Bharat, then we have JSX India, Fox Mandal. So we thank all our sponsors for the whole year-long event. So with this thank note, please forgive me if I have forgotten anyone's name. It is not intentional. It is probably I'm unable to recollect something at this point in time. So please forgive me for that. And once again, thank you. Thank everyone. Thank you very much. And we will catch up soon with our next event.
Bye.
Thank you.